Show here with the build guide for last Epoch. I took part in the Maxroll Forge Guard arena tourney over the past week, and ton of fun. I've actually never played Merchant's Guild, let alone solo account found. So some fun things got to learn kind of along the way. Enjoyed it a lot more than I actually thought I would. I debating if COF is actually just better than Merchant's Guild. If you want to play like a true authentic experience, Merchant's Guild really is good if you want to do like lots of builds, but uh, there's some other issues with Merchant's Guild that really don't you don't really experience with COF. Just being able to kind of get what you want, 2 and 3 LPs very easily. Obviously, you can't just purchase like Exalteds. Like is easy, but I've never had so many double and triple exalted drops, which again is like impossible to get in Merchant's Guild without farming gold, which is just not very fun in this game. So, anyways, the build here revolves around Torquefin's Hunger, which is a two-handed sword that basically gives a ton of value to bleed. So you get Fizz Pen and bleed chance per 5 uncapped Fizz res. And Forge Guard has a ton of just baseline Fizz res built into its tree and lots of defenses. So, anytime you can be tanky and still dish out a good amount of damage, it's usually a good success for a build. So, um, we're going to, in this build, kind of utilize a little bit different, though, than the typical, like, what you'd expect from Bleed, which is just attack really fast, get tons of bleed stacks, and kill enemies. And what we really want is very, very strong, like heavy bleeds, and then to basically instantly pop those bleeds and kill targets very quickly. So it is an arena tournament, and arena scales like crazy, extremely fast. So like the enemies get very tanky, and they start doing crazy amounts of damage very quickly as well. So you kind of either have to kill them or be almost godlike, and eventually you're just going to die. So really, the concept was to get really strong bleeds, pop those bleeds right away, and kill enemies, and then really just evade most of the deadly mechanics. So around this concept is really just utilizing, as you kind of can see, is the volatile reversal, which actually you know is a skill itself is not like the most amazing damage wise, and it has some utility buffs. But what it does have inside of it is the ability not only to take monsters take 15% increased damage over time, which really is a more multiplier because they're taking damage, not you doing it. And also, along with the fact that it can basically proc Abyssal Echoes on cast, means that we can kind of bypass that cooldown of Abyssal Echoes and generate a ton of them. And that's where we're getting the instant pop bleeds from the Sanguine Eruption node, which basically just every time the initial burst like pulses, it's gonna consume all the bleed stacks immediately. So because we're applying really heavy bleed stacks from Torquefin's Hunger, it's basically doing you know hundreds of thousands to millions of damage pretty much in an instant. So um, kind of with that, we also are utilizing lunge just to basically dash around quickly, and also get the additional fizz pen from the Crusader's Fury. Um, we can get tons and tons of fizz pen just because the way we can dash through enemies in arena as well. And then multi strike is our main delivery outside of the AOE from a volatile reversal. Multi strike really is just our kind of single target, our mana generator, and it's what we use for the majority of like the tougher enemies because we can apply tons of bleed damage through the large more multipliers and penned in multi strike. You can either attack fast with it or kind of go the really slow initial strike route, which is kind of what I eventually ended up doing. And then lastly, just kind of the build kind of just ends up with healing hands, just because it's a way to heal ourselves pretty quickly. So overall, it's really interesting, fun build to be able to just like dart in and out of combat, dash around. Devour or Volatile Reversal really is like feels like Nightcrawler from X-Men. Just being able to like dash around really quickly, and using the future forward, you can really just get two jumps along with two cooldowns of lunge. Like you are probably one of the fastest monolith clears on a sentinel that you can potentially be. You're pretty much almost up there with speed as a rogue just because of the sheer amount of like cooldown and speed you can go. So why don't we jump in game and see the rest? All right, so in game, we can see here that we're using Torque Defense Hunger with increased fizz damage. So, like I said, I actually leveled this with melee attack speed. Um, Basically, once I got Torque Defense Hunger with 1 LP, put some attack speed on it, and that worked out pretty well for the beginning. Um, I realized soon enough that just increasing the fizz damage is just going to be so much better for like the true bleed pops with Volatile Reversal, so switched over to just a tier 7 increased fizz damage, and then wasn't lucky enough to get the second prefix for damage over time, or just some like tier 5 melee attack speed. But really, the increased fizz damage is really the best here because we want to increase, the raw like base damage of the bleed before that all of our pen and like damage over time effects from all the bleeds take uh, take effect. So with the way that the build works, like I said, we really want to get these 3 stacks of viscera, and the way it works is you get a stack every 2 seconds, and then you have a chance to gain a stack on kill. So this works really well with the whole volatile reversal aspect because you can dash in onto a target pretty easily, and then because of, like I said, the node here inside Abyssal Echoes, it consumes all the bleed stacks instantly, means that we can get those visceral stacks very quickly, like in a mono in an arena. Obviously during bossing, it's not going to be to the same damage, and I wouldn't recommend this, as like a Aberoth or like Uber Aberoth even killer, but like it does all the time on bosses very very quickly. I've only up to 700 corruption, but time the tournament ended, so I just kind of stopped there. It probably can go higher. I don't see why not if it's able to clear like 300 arena, which is like way up there in terms of like corruption level. Um, so yeah, we use, like I said, volatile reversal. We use this. They take more damage over time if they're hit by these bolts. And these bolts shoot out and come back, so they can apply lots of bleed stacks to a target. So I can show you here, like go in those bolts and they come back and hit the same target. Um, so you can see they get instantly consumed, but you can see it like 50 just baseline, um, just from using like one volatile reversal. And then like I said, it spawns these abyssal echoes underneath, which then consumes it. And then we just take the cooldown reduction. We want to make sure it's not a traversal skill, so it doesn't interfere with lunges cooldown. We want more duration, so we can kind of like dart in and out of combat. And then we want the future focus here, so we're not like going back and forth. We can actually just always move forward like this if we want. And that second charge is not impacted by this reduced distance. So your first charge is low, and the second one you can just like dart really far away. So you can see a lot of times you'll like be hitting someone, dash, and then like dash back, and you can bleed pop very quickly. So yeah, we those are the two combinations for like AoE clearing like trash minions. And then lunge is just here again, um, to utilize the cooldown reduction, which actually kind of the concept of the build was to utilize this traversal skill cooldown with potions within Forge Guard. Um, just utilizing the Orion's Descent. But eventually I had so much cooldown reduction that like it didn't even matter to reset this combo, and you just run out of mana so quickly. So I had a 3 LP of this, but tier 7 and cooldown reduction still really works for using potions and applying smite for more bleed ticks as well. It's just pretty neat combo. There's more probably with this belt. This is the best that I kind of found for it, but it gives you mana, has increased chance to find potions, which is great. Forge Guard has naturally the increased chance to find potions with the less damage over time, so and Fizz Res, so it's like really strong. In combination, you always will have potions kind of on the ground, so that in whole combination really works. Um, and then lunge, like I said, the Crusader's Fury here is Fizz Pen per enemy hit in its path for 4 seconds, and this buff does stack. So you hit 10 enemies, that's 100 Fizz Pen, which is just an insane amount of damage and allows you to scale basically the Viscera very high, because if you hit a bunch of trash minions in the arena and then like dash on top of like the larger enemy, you just basically instantly delete it, which is kind of how you can go about. And then lastly, the multi-strike and healing hands. So healing hands is in here again just for some of these immobilize fear buffs. For an arena is great. It's a healing like apparatus for keeping us topped off along with our leech. Um, I did end up going Pearls of the Swine just because it helped with, this is only a week-long tournament and it has kind of everything I want on it. It gives you Fizz and Necrotic resistance, all res, so more Fizz vitality, increases. It has pretty much everything you want on there. I did use this Thar's Conundrum for a little bit, along with Healing Hands, just to kind of keep us topped off. But ultimately, in like arena, it doesn't really matter. It's not enough. You kind of need that leech, even though this is a very strong amulet for this build. It is pretty much comparable to getting a lot of health. So the rest is kind of just like your standard bleed setup. You might kind of see like Flayer's Pride, which you can use because we're a Forge Guard, Blood of the Exile, Velder's Chalice. I was using Wing Guards, like I said, with increased melee attack speed in the beginning with the tier 7 melee attack speed, which is allows you to just attack really fast for lots of damage, but like you don't get those Torkerfin hunger. You only get 3 stacks, so it still does like an insane amount of damage, but like you do a lot more and have more defenses with just Eternal Gauntlets. And then lastly, the Paranoia is there for just the being able to lunge and less damage taken. So not being able to choose the target allows us to line up the Fizz Pen stacks a lot easier because we're not dashing to a target. We can just dash wherever, and for mobility, you can just dash whenever we want when it's off cooldown. Just is very strong. And then because we're popping those bleeds instantly, bleed duration is actually one of the strongest, like more multipliers we can get for this build. And Sentinel has access to bleed duration just on their chest and helmet, so and in their idols. So we get bleed duration and damage over time is like the best. And then we can stack Fizz Res and Vitality. So like my whole idols are set up for increased bleed duration. You can see we have like 260% increased bleed duration. So like just hitting an enemy is just gonna cause the bleeds to last, 6, 7, 8 seconds. And because the way that duration works in this game, it just does more damage, the same damage over time. But because we're consolidating that all into the Abyssal Echoes, we can just, do our damage, Abyssal Echoes, and then pop it all, very quickly. So, tons and tons of damage pretty instantly. So yeah, other options that I thought of is like Stymied Fate, like I said, the Conundrum. They really can work with this build, but Blood of the Exile is just the best for bleed. But if you want to go like something with more like lunge focused, if they ever buff lunged, it's a good concept with it. So blessings are all pretty much what you would need. Fizz res, armor, increased fizz damage is an amazing blessing for this build. Health, and then I just use lightning res to cap the rest of my lightning res. And then really here, it's pretty much the base Sentinel kind of talent here. I use Void Knight for the Fizz Res and health. Same here, increased health and health and strength and more armor. So we're just using defensives here. Same with Paladin. We want block chance, elemental res, and endurance threshold, and then our just baseline endurance and health. And then the Forge Guard is really it's not very standard, but it's like what you'd want. This node actually becomes like usable because of the Fizz Res is good for our build. We want health, strength, block. Again, more health, strength, armor, less damage taken, and then the potions, Forge Master's Might, so we can use the shield, which is actually more damage for us, and then Masters of Arms, so we can get all the benefits of a two-hander and the benefits of a shield. So pretty standard, what I would think, for like the passives, and pretty mostly standard here. This node does work for the initial strike, and only the initial strike will be able to consume Torquefin's hunger. So you actually you don't necessarily get the buffs on all the extra like multi-strike swords. It does apply a lot of bleeds, so it is good. It's not bad. But eventually, I just took nodes off of Perfect Steel, which is great. Like while I was leveling, I used Perfect Steel and Aggressive Cadence because just more swords is better. Until I was able to get the pure bleed damage up, and then the Fizz Pen here. So that's like what I would consider like the first 20 points. You could put, if I had more points, just put them up into these two here. You could do this one for the more damage when you're at max stacks, which is good. This is an okay node, but it's I think what max like 100% bleed chance, because you can have up to 4 swords and it's 25, yeah, so 100%. And then this node is awesome, but it does not work for bleed since it's just melee damage, so it doesn't actually work for ailments. Other than that, that's kind of the build concept. You dart around, lunge, and reset your cooldowns and kill things with bleed. So high praise for Max for putting on, and for Vision for getting it all coordinated. The website worked really cool, just being on track and see kind of everyone else's arena like standings. I think I ended up in like 10th place at like 339 was where I died. So like 10th place overall between hardcore and softcore combined. But yeah, there were some really cool, interesting, like extremely tanky builds on there. There's an Apophis, which is like not supposed to be in there, which was I know killing people. It killed me a couple times on my runs as well. It's just like extremely high damage. But other than that, yeah, tons of fun. Thanks.
I cannot do that. cannot do that. I cannot do that. Do that. Stand down or die. Stand down or die. Down. I cannot do that. Stand down or die.